Back home, people. Before profit, MLA Gerry Carroll has questioned the amount of money the executive is spending on plane journeys. He has suggested that all business class flights for politicians here should be scrapped, with members flying economy only. I like Gerry. I like a lot of what Gerry stands for, but I think this is utter bullshit and nothing more than virtual signalling at its worst. Indeed, if our politicians started flying economy, I've no doubt Gerry would then argue they should be taking a steamer boat or horse and cart to get around. When our politicians travel, they do so to promote trade and investment and should expect to be given a comfortable seat. I, for one, do not want to see our First Minister stuck in economy with us plebs, trying to work through her ministerial business while her knees are up to her chest. Indeed, if Mr. Carroll argued that the Assembly should reflect on the need for overseas visits and whether environmentally destructive air travel is necessary in the first place. Well, Gerry, here's my question. Unless you have access to a Star Trek transporter, the answer is yes. The flights are needed. For we are an island nation and need our politicians to fly to other nations to promote and canvass for trade. It's not too complicated, sure it's not. This is a non-story, achieving nothing apart from a few headlines for Gerry, who needs to wise up and stop acting like a school master debater. You heard that right. Indeed, I'd argue there's another overriding reason why our politicians shouldn't be allowed to travel economy class. They shouldn't be allowed in economy. Because if there were an economy, they'd be sitting beside us. Do you understand? Do you think of the horror of that? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't hate all politicians. I'm sure there are a few I wouldn't mind sharing a cramped few hours with, but they are very much a minority. The idea of being pressed against the rest would be the stuff of utter nightmares. And concerning this, I can speak from experience. Let me tell you a story. Are you all sitting comfortably? I was flying back home via Heathrow with my family some years ago. Now, as there are 4 of us and the seat configuration on most short flights have 3 seats together, I always end up in a single seat with a wife accompanying the children. Fair enough. I don't mind. That's fair enough. No big problem. That was until the day when this reality nearly resulted in me having a cardiac. So what had happened was my wife and 2 children had boarded the plane ahead of me, right? And were making their way up the aisle to their seats. Suddenly, my wife stopped, frozen, for no discernible reason as far as I could see, and began staring directly at me. Immediately, I knew something horrible was about to befall me as she had that peculiar look on her face. It's a look most men in a long-term relationship know well and can immediately be recognised as our partner's faces flickering between deep pity and gleeful joy at what is about to happen to us. I did the usual checklist of making sure the remnants of a rush dinner weren't still lurking in my beard and that neither my nose nor, worse, another part of my anatomy had sprung a leak. Convinced that none of this was true, I then nervously moved towards my seat, number 14B. I will never forget it. And it wasn't until I placed my little bag in the overhead locker and looked down that I understand my wife's joy and my predicament. For sitting in the seat in 14A was none other than the Honourable Member for East Londonderry, Gerry Carroll. Now, admittedly, it could have been any local politician, and the outcome would have been pretty much the same. For the anguish on my face was mirrored in his, proving I must have mortally offended him on some previous occasion, as I have most politicians here. Now, my wife to this day argues that I begged her to swap seats with me. This is an exaggeration. An exaggeration. No, I do admit that I did mouth, please, no, please, please, in desperation. To her credit, she acquiesced, and I've never been so happy as to sit beside my son for over an hour as he described the technicalities of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, some of you may believe that an hour spent in such confined conditions could have led to a road to Damascus conversion. Gregory and I could have discovered things in common and bonded in our mutual love for where we live. I'm somewhat less convinced of such an eventuality. Indeed, I'd argue there's a bigger chance that, like so many marches, that plane could have been ended up rerouted, and Gregory and I marched off in handcuffs. So, Gerry Carroll, the answer is a definite no. We do not want our politicians sitting beside us in the economy class. And no, we do not begrudge spending the extra to stick them in the business class well out of our sight. Just leave them up there. Just leave them up there talking to each other. That's my bet. Just don't, because I don't think I go through it again. I don't think my heart would take it again. The horror in both our faces. It was horrible. I still wake up at night. I see that wee face looking up at me. Sometimes I still have that nightmare stuff.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.